Welcome to today's countdown of the top 5 weirdest true crime stories you won't believe. From thieves suing their victims to chilling escapes from the grave, these shocking cases prove that truth really is stranger than fiction. The killer who called 911. It was a quiet night in 2010 when police in Oregon received a strange 911 call. The voice on the other end wasn't panicked. It was calm, too calm. The caller simply said, "I just killed someone. I can't live with myself anymore." The operator, stunned, asked for more information. The man gave his name, Randy Lee Phelps, and his location without hesitation. He wasn't running. He was turning himself in. Officers raced to the scene and found Randy sitting on the front porch waiting. Inside the house, they discovered the body of his roommate, a 59-year-old man named James Kelly. He had been brutally murdered, stabbed multiple times. Blood was everywhere. There was no doubt that something terrible had happened, but the mystery was just beginning. Randy confessed immediately. He told the police everything. He said James had been tormenting him for years. Psychological abuse, threats, and manipulation. But there was no evidence of that, no police reports, no witnesses, just Randy's word. He said something in his mind snapped, and he just lost control. The strange part. After the murder, Randy didn't run. He didn't try to hide the body. He didn't even clean the scene. Instead, he made a sandwich, sat down, and thought about what he'd done. Then he picked up the phone and called 911. Not out of fear, but out of guilt. The police said Randy showed no signs of being high or drunk. He was perfectly sober, perfectly aware. That's what made it so chilling. Later, during the trial, Randy pleaded guilty. He told the judge, "I did it. I accept whatever comes next." He was sentenced to life in prison, but people still talk about the case. Not just because of the murder, but because of the eerie calmness in that 911 call. Most killers run. Most lie. Randy just confessed. To this day, no one knows exactly what drove him to do it. But one thing is clear, he wanted to be caught. And he made sure he was. He robbed a bank, then slept there. In the world of true crime, some stories are so strange that they sound like bad comedy sketches. One of the weirdest happened in 2012 in Florida, where a man named Dion Davis decided he was going to rob a bank. He walked into the Bank of America, handed the teller a note, and demanded cash. The teller, frightened, handed him a bag full of money. Davis walked out with thousands of dollars in his hands. So far, it was a pretty standard robbery. But what happened next turned it into one of the most bizarre true crime stories ever. Instead of running, instead of hiding, instead of escaping the city, Davis walked across the street to a motel. He got a room. He put the stolen cash right next to him. And then he fell asleep. Yes, a man who had just robbed a bank lay down in bed, surrounded by stolen money, and took a nap. He didn't even try to cover his tracks. He left the bag wide open, bills spilling out. Meanwhile, the police had already been alerted. They canvassed the area, and it didn't take long before they got a tip about a suspicious man at the motel. Officers entered the room, and there he was, fast asleep, like a child after a long day. They shook him awake, and Davis looked confused, almost annoyed, like they had ruined his rest. The police later said it was one of the easiest arrests they had ever made. He didn't resist. He didn't fight. He didn't even deny it. The evidence was literally scattered all around him. When asked later why he did it, there was no clear answer. Some reports suggested drugs. Others said he was just reckless and not thinking straight. But either way, his decision to nap after robbing a bank made headlines across the country. Dion Davis went from a would-be-clever criminal to the punchline of late-night jokes. A man who robbed a bank and then fell asleep on the job. One thing is certain, if there were awards for the dumbest getaway plans, Davis would have won first place. Woman marries her kidnapper. Some crimes are so strange they blur the line between horror and tragedy. One such story comes from the 1970s in California, where a young girl named Colleen Stan lived through an ordeal that would later shock the world. Colleen was only 20 years old when she decided to hitchhike to a friend's birthday party in 1977. She thought it would be safe. People hitchhiked often in those days. A smiling couple, Cameron and Janice Hooker, stopped their car and offered her a ride. Grateful, she climbed in. It was a decision that would change her life forever. Instead of taking her to her friend's house, Cameron kidnapped Colleen. He forced her into a wooden box he had built specifically for imprisoning victims. That box was placed under his bed, and Colleen was kept there for 7 years. She endured physical abuse, isolation, and psychological manipulation so severe that many experts later said It was one of the most disturbing cases of control they had ever seen. But here's the strangest part. After years of captivity, Colleen became so brainwashed that she did not run when she had the chance. Cameron convinced her that a powerful secret organization would torture and kill her family if she tried to escape. She believed every word. The story took an even darker twist when Cameron forced Colleen to sign a slave contract. He told her she was his property. And unbelievably, he later proposed marriage. Under fear, pressure, and complete control, Colleen agreed. She took part in a twisted ceremony, marrying the man who had stolen her freedom. Eventually, after years of torment, Colleen was released when Cameron's wife Janice finally confessed to authorities. Cameron Hooker was arrested and sentenced to over 100 years in prison. The case became known as the girl in the box. And the detail that haunts people most is that for a time, Colleen truly believed she was married to her kidnapper. A crime so bizarre, so unbelievable, that it almost sounds like fiction. But it wasn't. It was painfully real. The thief who sued his victim. Most true crime stories end with the criminal in handcuffs, but this one took a strange turn that left everyone shaking their heads. In 1998, in California, a man named Terrence Dixon tried to break into a house through the garage. His plan was simple: sneak in, grab what he could, and get out before anyone noticed. But the universe had other plans. As Dixon pushed through the garage door, it jammed behind him. He was trapped. He tried the main door into the house, but it was locked tight. The family was away on vacation, and no one was coming home for days. There he was, stuck in someone else's garage, a thief caught not by police, but by bad luck. For 8 long days, Dixon survived on dog food and a case of Pepsi he found in the garage. He slept on the cold floor, pacing back and forth, waiting for rescue. When the family finally returned, they found him weak, hungry, and furious. They called the police, and he was promptly arrested. But here's where the story gets truly bizarre. Instead of accepting responsibility for the break-in, Dixon turned around and sued the homeowners. Yes, the burglar who broke into their house claimed it was their fault he had been trapped. He argued that the trauma of being stuck in the garage caused him mental suffering. And shockingly, a court allowed his lawsuit to move forward. The jury eventually awarded him damages. Reports say around $500,000. The case became infamous across the United States as an example of how ridiculous the legal system could sometimes be. People couldn't believe it. A man tried to rob a family, got trapped, and then got paid for it. It sparked outrage. Talk shows, newspapers, and late-night comedians all mocked the case. But for the family, it wasn't funny. They had to watch the man who tried to rob them walk away with money because of a technicality. A thief who broke the law, and then broke common sense. Buried alive and survived. Few true crime stories are more terrifying than being buried alive. For one woman in Georgia in 2010, this nightmare became real. Her name was Tina Herman, a hardworking mother who never expected her ordinary day to turn into a living horror. She was attacked by a man named Joseph Fritzl, a criminal desperate for money and control. After forcing Tina into the trunk of her own car, he drove her to a remote wooded area. There, he tied her hands and forced her into a makeshift grave he had prepared earlier. He placed her inside a small plastic container, barely big enough for her to move, then covered it with dirt and heavy branches. His plan was simple: keep her trapped until he decided what to do with her, or until she suffocated. For most people, that would have been the end. But Tina was not ready to die. In the darkness of that cramped grave, she fought panic. She focused on breathing slowly, conserving her air. She pressed her arms and legs against the sides of the container until, with incredible effort, she managed to shift the soil above her. Every second felt endless. Dirt filled her lungs, her vision blurred, but still, she clawed her way upward. Finally, after hours of desperate struggle, her hand broke through the earth. She pushed, gasped for air, and pulled herself out of the shallow grave. Covered in mud, trembling, and barely able to stand, Tina stumbled through the woods until she found help. When authorities captured her attacker, the evidence was undeniable. He had buried her alive, believing no one would ever find her. Instead, she lived to testify against him in court. He was sentenced to life in prison. Tina's story became a chilling reminder of both the cruelty humans are capable of and the unimaginable strength of the will to survive. She was buried alive, but she refused to stay buried.